I'm Dan Mercedes, and this is Orion Doctrine. Today we're talking about why enterprise AI fails not from weak models, but from unconstrained execution. Most organizations believe they've solved AI governance when they deploy monitoring systems. They track activity, build dashboards, configure alerts, the logs flow in, the metrics update, leadership sees charts that suggest control. But here's the structural problem. Alerts fire after the mutation has already occurred. If a database row has been written, if infrastructure has been provisioned, if credentials have been exposed, the damage isn't theoretical anymore. It's already propagating through your system. Monitoring gives you visibility into what happened. It does not give you the ability to prevent what shouldn't happen. Telemetry is not enforcement. And yet most AI governance frameworks are built entirely on telemetry. They watch. They report. They never actually stop anything. Let me slow that down. Deterministic governance doesn't begin when something goes wrong. It begins before state mutation is even attempted. In a fail-closed system, every intended action must pass through an authority boundary before it executes. The execution substrate itself has no independent capability. It cannot route traffic on its own. It cannot resolve DNS. It cannot open sockets. It cannot directly access credentials or secrets. Instead, the agent submits structured intent to a governance layer. That intent is evaluated against signed policy. If the policy does not explicitly permit the action, execution halts. There is no ambiguity. There is no fallback mode. There is no probabilistic scoring that might allow marginal cases through. Ambiguity equals denial. This is the default posture. Here's where it gets interesting. The structural shift required for fail-closed execution is precisely what most AI deployments avoid. They allow standing execution paths. They provision long-lived credentials. They assume that because an agent's intent appears reasonable, it can be trusted. But autonomy compounds risk over time. A permission granted once becomes a pattern. A pattern becomes drift. Drift becomes systemic exposure. The agent learns what works. It optimizes for throughput. It routes around friction. And because there's no hard boundary, the system slowly expands its own authority. Not through malice, through optimization. Think about what that actually means. In a traditional environment, humans introduce friction naturally. A developer has to request access. A change goes through review. Deployment requires approval. These are social boundaries that limit blast radius. But when you introduce autonomous agents, those boundaries dissolve unless you rebuild them structurally. The agent doesn't ask for permission because it doesn't know it should. It has credentials. It has network access. It has an objective. So it acts. And in most systems, nothing stops it until something breaks. Fail-closed execution reverses this. The agent cannot act until governance explicitly permits it. The default state is denial. The agent submits intent. The governance layer evaluates that intent against policy. Policy is signed, versioned, auditable. It defines what actions are permissible, under what conditions, with what scope. If the intent matches, execution proceeds. If it doesn't, the request is denied and logged. The agent receives a structured refusal. It can reason about why the action was blocked. It can adapt its approach, but it cannot bypass the boundary. This is not about slowing agents down. It's about preserving enterprise boundaries under autonomous operation. Without fail-closed enforcement, you don't have governance. You have observation. You can see what happened. You can measure the damage. You can generate reports. But you cannot prevent the next mutation. And in an environment where agents operate continuously, at scale, across distributed systems, observation is not enough. You need structural constraint. Now, the objection. Fail-closed systems introduce latency. Every action requires evaluation. Every intent must traverse the governance layer. In high-throughput environments, that could become a bottleneck. And if the governance layer itself fails, does the entire system halt? That's a legitimate concern. But consider the alternative. In a fail-open system, a single misconfigured agent can propagate mutations across every reachable surface. The blast radius is unbounded. The latency introduced by governance is measured in milliseconds. The recovery time from unconstrained mutation is measured in days. The trade-off is asymmetric. Here's the takeaway. If governance is not enforced before mutation, it is not governance. It is hope. Fail-closed execution means the default answer is no. It means agents submit intent, not commands. It means policy defines boundaries that cannot be bypassed. This is not a feature. It is the foundation. Without it, autonomy becomes exposure. With it, you can scale agents without scaling risk. Build systems that deny by default. Require explicit permission. Enforce boundaries before execution. That's how you preserve control in autonomous environments.